The big story of the night, obviously, in sports last night was Tua Tagovailoa going down in a way that made people really uncomfortable, seeing how violent football is, and his fingers splayed because it seemed like it was obvious after he was taken off on a stretcher that he had a concussion, and it seemed also obvious that it was his second concussion in a couple of weeks, even though the Dolphins were saying it's a back injury. Chris Nowinski is the founding CEO of the Concussion Legacy Foundation. He's a neuroscientist. He's an author. He's a speaker. He's a former wrestler, professional wrestler. And 6 hours before the game last night, he tweeted, "If Tua takes the field tonight, it's a massive step back for concussion care in the NFL. If he has a second concussion that destroys his career or season, everyone involved will be sued and should lose their jobs, coaches included. We all saw it. Even they must know that this isn't right." Obviously, that tweet went viral because you sent it before the game, and everybody was pretty disturbed by the visuals last night. So thank you for making the time. This is a bit of a cause for you, correct? Can you just take us through, before we get into what happened last night with Tua, just why this is such a personal cause to you?
Yeah, 19 years ago, after playing football at Harvard, I wrestled for the WWE and had a very bright future on Monday Night Raw. And I had a number of concussions, including 2 in a month, that at the time I didn't understand were concussions, so I didn't report them. But the second one in a month gave me permanent post-concussion syndrome, ended my career, changed my life, changed everything. And in trying to get better, I learned that everything we were doing about concussions in sports was wrong, and I made it my mission to change that. And, up until tonight or last night, I thought we were changing it.
Do you feel comfortable? Obviously, you feel comfortable diagnosing him based on the video you saw last week that the Dolphins are saying is back related, and the NFLPA wants more studying of the concussion protocol. Even though you're a PhD, can you make that distinction conclusively just watching a video?
So a concussion is diagnosed. It's a clinical diagnosis, but there are signs. You separate concussions into signs and symptoms. So when I had headaches, I didn't tell anybody about those were symptoms. But when you have obvious outward signs, you can actually diagnose concussion from video. But in this case, what he showed last week was grabbing his head when he hit the ground, which is a sign, and then getting up and taking 2 steps backward, which is a sign, and then taking 2 steps forward and shaking his head like this, which is a classic clear the cobwebs for anyone who's ever had a concussion, and means you have a visual disturbance, which is 100% of the time a concussion. And then he fell, and then he had to be held up by his teammates. So when you put those 5 things together, I am certain he had 99.9999% certain he had a concussion. Let's go that far. And any doctor worth his salt assumes a concussion in that case, because you cannot rule it out either. He never should have gone back in the game. And then if he's your star player, he's never back in 5 days. Like, that's just end of story. Terrible management twice in 5 days that put him at horrible risk for what happened tonight, and hopefully, who knows what happens from here. You can die from second impact syndrome when you have two of these hits in a week. You can have careers end. My career's ended. It's an embarrassment to everybody involved.
You're saying, as I mentioned, if he has a second concussion that destroys his season or career, everyone involved will be sued and should lose their jobs, coaches included. You know the climate of the NFL. You know the pressure to get back out there. Tell me what went wrong here, because you're saying there's no circumstance, and obviously we can play the result now, but you're saying there's no circumstance he should have been playing last night, that's an easy call from your living room.
Yeah, I mean, if you care about him as a human being, because he showed 5 signs of a concussion, one of which doesn't happen in any other circumstance, you can make this call. And what should have happened is that he should have been rested so that his brain could recover. And frankly, this is such a medical disaster that if I'm Tua and I recover from this, which is not guaranteed, I might say I don't want to play for this team anymore. Because what they did, no doctor should have believed him when he said his back hurt. And just think about the other side of that. He never grabbed his back. He never gave any indication his back hurt from the video. So we know players have been honest for years that they've lied about concussions. When a doctor's going to the field, they always say, it's my knee, it's my ankle. They try to distract them. Any doctor should know this. This should not be happening in 2022. And we have to think about Tua as a human being. We have former NFL players developing CTE, dying by suicide. One concussion doubles your risk of suicide in the rest of your life. This is a disaster.
What can you tell me about the way that his fingers were splayed in front of his face, which is one of the things that disturbed people so much, seeing what was obviously the inability to control hands that were frozen?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that this was a result of the fencing posture. So the fencing posture is rare, and it's a sign of a serious brain injury where your arms, one or two, are stuck straight out when you're unconscious. And it means that your brainstem is involved in the injury. So there could be something else, but it looks like that. It rarely comes down to the hand. I mean, the hands are a little bit like that, but his look really awkward and troubling. So it's some sort of convulsion. I don't necessarily think it was a seizure based on my discussions with medical doctors, but I'm not certain. But it's a disaster.
Prime Video reported last night that he was discharged and was expected to travel back with the team. You also said, after seeing what happened, fire the medical staffs and coaches. That is something that never happens. Like, I understand why you're saying that, but you know good and well that that's not one of the possibilities here.
No. I mean, I understand that there will probably not be any punishment, sadly, for the people who put him out there. But I'm letting people know that I believe there should be. Like, you just cannot mess with someone's life and their future like this. And so I can't imagine any patient trusting the doctor who made that call. I don't know who it is. I don't care. And then the coaches should know better. Like, I think even if you don't want to believe that it's a concussion, to put your star quarterback in the future franchise who's having an amazing season at risk of losing his season in week 4, because when you can tell as a coach he had a concussion, is just like the most strategically ridiculous choice to ever make in the world. And so when the Dolphins maybe lose him for the season and they lose games like this, a coach should have been able to step in and say, I don't want to play him. Like, it was that obvious to the public that someone without medical training should know better.
Can you explain to us the second impact syndrome? Can you explain to us the dangers of what you're talking about there, that you were saying he shouldn't play because that could happen?
Yeah. So second impact syndrome is when, for some reason, after a concussion that hasn't resolved, usually the next week or two, an athlete who's hiding symptoms will take another blow to the head and cause rapid swelling of their brain. And if they don't get taken to a hospital and their skull taken off for the swelling, 50% die, 50% recover, 90% are changed for the rest of their life. So that's the most catastrophic outcome. But then now we just have to worry about if he's gotten past the window where he could die. Now we just have to worry about, is he going to have 15 years of headaches like me that prevent him from ever going back on the field, or is he going to be lucky and be not have chronic symptoms? But even then, think about, like, we in America, I was just in Australia where they still put players back into a season after 3 concussions. And I made the point, we don't do this in America anymore. It's, a guy gets 2 concussions in the season, a third one could ruin their career. You don't put them back in. So I don't see how you put them back in this season. Unless they're going to keep trying to claim that he never had a concussion last week. But this should be season ending if we care about Tua's future.
I doubt very much that it will be a season ending. Your language here, I would say, is incendiary. You are saying things more extreme than most when you write on Twitter, you guys should go to jail for letting him play 5 days after an obvious concussion you covered up. If he dies from second impact syndrome, I'm pushing for murder charges. You are saying, I'm not hearing anyone speaking this extremely from the medical community, but this is also something that's emotional and personal to you because of what you've endured, correct?
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily speaking from the medical community. That's me as somebody who's lived through this and knows that it doesn't have to be this way. Saying that medical staffs and teams have to take responsibility for people's lives. That's their job. And so when you make a colossal mistake like this, there needs to be responsibility. Like, again, I'm yelling before the game and all week, don't play him. He could die. If he died, I think the legal, the legal world looks into this, because medically he should not have been out there.
But no one thinks this way. No one thinks he's going to die. This is not.
That's the problem. That's literally the problem, that no one thinks by making this mistake he could die. And that's why you have to raise this. Like, if you put someone out there and he dies because you made the wrong choice, somebody's got to take responsibility for that.
Beyond that, I don't believe that many people other than you will be saying he's got to be out for the season. You understand that this is sort of baked into the violence of the sport, that it seems to me that even with their concussion protocols, that they're behind on how it is to treat this stuff.
The problem is, like, no, I think we've taken a step back, and we're not conservative anymore, because we haven't seen these outcomes in a few years where we screwed up somebody so badly because we made such a callous decision. So I think I'm trying to draw attention to this and as a line in the sand to say, please, for God's sake, don't let this happen again. I've been doing this for now 15 years. And I will tell you, I spent the beginning of this week visiting the widow of one of my college teammates who died with CTE. And he played in the NFL. And I this is not the week to mess around on this issue. I see what happens down the line of these guys, and no one's gonna, no one else is gonna say anything. I'll say it. We got to treat this thing like a life or death issue, or else people are gonna die.
Can you explain to me the damages of 2 concussions in 5 days, if indeed he has 2 concussions in 5 days?
When the brain's not allowed to, so when you have a concussion, a neurometabolic cascade of concussion occurs. A lot of things happen in the first few minutes, but still you have chemical and metabolic changes that last for days, weeks usually. And so it's basically an energy crisis in your brain. And if you bring that energy crisis in twice in a week, you're taking brain cells that were recovering and you're killing them. And so you're talking about permanent brain damage and cell death from 2 injuries at a time, where all these, what you would have recovered from, you're no longer recovering from.
And if I tell you he will be on a field again in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you say that's irresponsible?
If he's on the field within a month, we need to give up on the NFL completely. I mean, at least a month for after what we've seen the last 2 weeks. Like, I don't care who you are, and frankly, it should be the whole season.
Chris, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your dedication to this cause, sir. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you, Dan.